Hey, people, welcome. This world is dark. I won't sugarcoat it. Some messed up things happen here. Everything seems hopeless and meaningless. What is there to look forward to? Are we to just mindlessly seek pleasure until we die? Or do we burden ourselves with work, hoping to be one of the few to be on top? I mean, what kind of a life is that? It's crazy. But that's how most people live. But it doesn't have to be that way. There is one way to live with purpose, hope, and joy. And this VeggieTales episode illustrates this in a very simple but meaningful way. This is an Easter carol. What? VeggieTales that show about talking, singing Christian vegetables made for children? You can't be serious. But I am. Before I get into it, let me give you some context. So basically, this movie is a sequel to another VeggieTales production called The Star of Christmas. Spoilers, by the way. The Star of Christmas, in its bare bones, is about the birth of Jesus. The main character, Cavis Appyfart, learns that the best way to teach people how to love is to practice what you preach. You don't need to have a huge theatrical production to do that. Jesus was born in a stable, one of the most humble places to be in. He didn't have any fancy clothes, he didn't have a crown, he didn't have any servants. And yet, when the shepherds from the field looked upon him, they were so moved. So much so that they went out into the streets and told everyone about him. They knew that he was the Messiah. The simplicity and impact of this story is conveyed through Edmund Gilbert's play. He is the son of the local pastor, and this boy is doing his own Christmas pageant. Edmund didn't have the actors' lights or songs that Cavis did, but he still made more of a splash than Cavis' show could ever make. Why am I talking about this movie? Because you can't have Easter without Christmas. To sum up an Easter carol, a rich man named Ebenezer Nezer inherited an egg factory that his grandmother built. But before she died, she told him that Easter means no more death. What does that mean? How could she say that when she died? After thinking about it for some time, he came to a conclusion. When she said Easter means no more death, she meant that he wanted him to make sure that Easter lasted forever. And if Easter lasts, then it'll be like she's still alive. So he has a plan. He'll destroy the local church in order to make room for a new and exciting attraction called Easterland, where Easter is forever. Do you see anything wrong with this picture? Obviously, it's not what she meant. So an angel toy transformer thing has to teach Nezer what she really meant. He goes on a journey through time and learns what the world would be like if there was no hope of Easter, aka Jesus. It wasn't a pretty sight. So he repents and uses his wealth for the good of others. You don't often see movies about Easter, and when you do, they're not good. Usually. Most people focus on the manger and forget the cross. They're both important, but it means nothing if they're separate. Can you imagine if the story of Jesus ended in the stable, or we didn't have context for why the cross is important? So I really appreciate Big Idea for looking at both of these things. One of the biggest problems I find in Christian media is the way that antagonists/villains are written. At best, most of them are lazy and unoriginal. At worst, they're strawmen. A bad villain can really bog down the film and even undermine what you're trying to say. Most people seem to think that the more evil a person does, the better the villain. Well, that can work in some cases if you know exactly what you're doing, but most people don't. The general mindset seems to be we don't need to put any effort into the opposing side because our side is right and they're wrong. We don't need to explain why they hate Christians. We don't need to make them interesting because they're not the main character who so happens to agree with what we say. Despite popular belief, protagonist is not good guy, it's just character that we follow throughout the story, and antagonist is simply somebody who goes against the protagonist. And yes, it's generally the rule of thumb that the protagonist is a good guy and the antagonist is the bad guy, but it doesn't always need to be like that. It doesn't have to be such a strict dichotomy. There's plenty of media that does the opposite. And that can make for some very interesting stories. But if you're not going to make your villain deep and complex, at least make them entertaining to watch. With that being said, I really like the direction they went with Ebenezer Nezer. They could have easily made him into a one-dimensional rich guy who hates Easter, but he doesn't hate Easter. On the contrary, he actually loves it. And he thinks that by destroying the church, he'll make it last forever, which will be beneficial for everyone, and he'll honor his Christian grandmother. What he doesn't seem to understand is that Easter is not about the bunnies or the eggs or candy or anything like that. It's about Jesus. It's about Jesus resurrecting after being crucified on the cross. If somebody made a film like this, they probably would have had him be like, "Grr, I hate God and by extension Easter because my grandmother is dead. So I'm canceling all of you." Is Ebenezer greedy and misguided? Yes, but that's not all he is. He has layers. There's a reason why he's doing the things he's doing, and it's not just because I hate God. He's doing it because he wants to keep his grandmother's memory alive. His transition from selfish to selfless feels pretty natural too. When he's with Hope, we kind of see a different side to him. Instead of being the cold businessman that he is, he's kind of a buffoon, which makes sense because he's out of his element. He's flying with a weird bug thing and trying to learn about what Easter really means, and his grandmother told him that he missed a point, and it's all very confusing to him. And I really want to say that the chemistry between Hope, the aforementioned angel toy transformer thing, and Nezer is very entertaining and one of my favorite parts of the movie. The turning point happens when he finds out that the pastor's son is slowly dying, yet none of them are afraid, which freaks out Nezer. How can they be so calm knowing that their son is dying? What do they have that he doesn't? What do they know that he doesn't? And that's when Hope sings about Jesus and what he has done. He learns that as long as you have faith in Jesus and what he did, death won't be the end, it's a new beginning. When you realize that someone like Jesus sacrificed themselves for you, you get a new perspective on life. You become brave, you get conviction about the things you believe, and you have hope which you can spread to others. I know that there are cynics among you who don't believe in an afterlife, but let me ask you something. Would you rather live with hope or without it? If there was no hope, nobody would help anybody. Why should someone spend their time trying to improve society if we're all going to die anyway? Why bother at all? Either everything matters or nothing matters. Personally, I choose to believe the former.